here and on Zoom. So we're just going to get rolling because it might be a longer meeting. So just roll call first, if you don't mind, Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Ilya Abratman,
Present.
Emmanuel Gutierrez,
Present.
present via Zoom. Gabriel Maya,
Here.
Jennifer Simeo,
Present.
Alex Woodard, Marie Rodriguez.
Present.
Perfect. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Cool. Okay, so let's start with public comment, either here in person or on Zoom. And just a reminder, comment is limited to 3 minutes. If you are on the Zoom call, which currently we can't see, I don't know if we should, but you can go ahead and raise your hand and staff will see that. But we do have some in-person comments, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have several in-person comments. You'll have 3 minutes to give comments. I'm going to start with Fred Tournier.
Thank you. This on? Is this on?
Should be on. Try again.
Can I start over 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Thanks. So my name is Fred Tournier. I'm a property owner in Ward 3 and also in other wards. And I'm here tonight to talk to you about an industrial use, temporary industrial use that's in Ward 3 right now. And it's located at 509 and 535 Ryland. And right now it's currently a laydown area or a staging area for construction for the city of Reno's public works capital improvements. And typically those are temporary type items. Hey, you know, we need to lay down for a couple of months, all the equipment, and then we're done. But the problem with this laydown area, it's been a perpetual, kind of a constant type of use of a laydown area. And so what's that doing to the neighborhood? It's typically these are industrial uses. And this neighborhood, Ward 3, there's a lot of people in there, low to moderate income. There are people, you know, just getting by, you know, salt of the earth people, and they're constantly being blasted with dust coming off the site. There's soil that's all over the dirt, that's all over the streets. There's constant vibration of the noise that's going on just from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 at night. I went up to the area to talk to the construction workers there, and they didn't have a superintendent on site. And it's my understanding for the city of Reno that you're supposed to have a superintendent on site to at least some contact information to talk to somebody. And especially in Spanish, there's no, you know, Spanish language that's over there. And I know some other people are here. It's a call of action. I'm asking Ward 3, the Neighborhood Advisory Board, because, you know, this is your role. This is something you can pick up with. And I would hope that you would help us just find out what's going on this site. There's a lot of impacts that are happening in the area, and we're just looking for some type of mitigation, or when's the end date that's going on. It's beautiful out right now. I can't even open the windows, getting pounded by dust and everything. So it's not like this is a private developer in the North Valleys or down south. This is local jurisdictions that are causing the impact. So we're asking for your help. I don't think the council member is here.
He's just
Okay, so this is also for the council member that Councilmember Martinez. This is an item that I would hope as a council member, appointed council member, you know, the general elections coming up in 2024, that this is something you could get behind. And so the call of action is, if you guys could put this on your agenda just for follow-up, and so you have better understanding, but also council member, come on out to the site. 509, 535 Ryland. Come out to the site, bring the city manager. I know you can't do too much as a policymaker, but the city manager can. So I would ask that the call of action is that as a, you know, the appointed council member for Ward 3, and, you know, the general election's coming up. Help us out. We'll remember it. Thank you.
And just to clarify, this is Ilya Arberman for the record. You're talking about at Park and Ryland there?
It is Park and Ryland, High,
Okay.
Park, Ryland, Willow.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Mark Markel.
Good evening, people. I want to explain that I didn't a drunk driving crash. I was a passenger, and I just want to make sure other people for Ward, well, everybody, but especially Ward 3, that's the ward I live in. But I just wanted to be sure that you didn't drive with drunk drivers. I was in a motor vehicle crash. We rolled 8 times, we were doing 100, and I got ejected and the car landed on my head. And I should be dead, but less accident crashes have killed people. I feel that God willed me alive. The doctors saved my life, of course, but God willed me alive to show people what can happen when you get in the car with drunk drivers. I just want to be sure everybody, nobody drinks and drives or gets in the car with their drunk driver. It's stupid, but I just wanted to talk about that to the people of Ward 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Up next, we have Matt Othmer.
Cool. We just hit it. Yeah. I'm Matt, Elizabeth, my partner. We are here to echo what Mr. Fred was discussing a few minutes ago. Basically, the amount of nuisance that is occurring with a construction site that's on 509 Ryland, was it? So yeah, just coming to say that we really understand the need for public infrastructure projects. We understand that these things have to happen. This is now the second or third iteration of this space being used as a laydown site. And like, we feel that we've, as a community, like we've done our time and like given to the city enough. And it's like turned our homes, it's taken away the refuge, like kind of side of a home. You know, I walk around with noise canceling headphones on. As Fred said, we don't go outside. There's dust everywhere. The impacts from the construction noise, like literally wake us up out of sleep. They work on Saturdays, they work on Sundays. And it's just like, it's to this point where it's like, it's just not an acceptable way to treat a community. And as Fred also said, we are impacted by this because we are literally next door to the site. There is a pretty large subsidized elderly living facility that is directly downwind of the site. And I would argue that they are even more impacted by this. And it's just not a way to treat citizens of any sort, much less elderly citizens with chronic health issues. So we've been through this for a couple of years now, and everybody in our community, multiple people from that development, from that senior complex, and then multiple people who are homeowners or renters in the area. Everybody, we all just kind of get together as a neighborhood and echo the fact that we just can't really, it's just not fair to keep doing this to us. So that's where we're at.
And so just our call to action is similar to Fred's, of trying to figure out what are they doing there? What is their long-term plan? And what can be done for mitigation? Because as he says, their trucks are on before 7 a.m. They wake us up with their trucks backing up before 7 a.m. and then their noise is constant. We can't have our windows open. You can't use our outdoor space at all. So we want some answers about what can be done to improve the situation for the homeowners and the residents of this. I know it's multi-use Reno, or multi-use downtown use, but it's a residential neighborhood. Like it's a block of homes. So we'd like to see something done about it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, we'll definitely flag it and see if we can get it on agenda for next month.
Okay. up
Any
next-
comments online? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, one more in person registered. We have Pablo Nava Duran.
All right, good morning. So my name is Paul Natuan and I live in Ward 3. This is my first time and we're attending Ward 3 in a neighborhood advisory community. Glad to hear this. Yay. So I hear talk about redistricting. I might move to a different ward and after redistricting. So I currently live in Ward 3. So talk about the redistricting of a Nearwood neighborhood that could impact the Nearwood neighborhood to move into a different ward or it might stay same or the Ward 3 gets smaller when you get created a new ward. So I want and I'm creating a maps called Traft 1, Traft 2, Traft 3, which neighborhood could go to. So I wanted to keep it clear. So I did submit today to community interest about the Nearwood neighborhood because this is a historic neighborhood. It's mostly Hispanic, Latino, low-income neighborhood. I think this should be retained, not divided by lines. So I heard rumor about the divide Nearwood up to like a pack lane. So I wanted to keep in mind, I want to maintain a Nearwood neighborhood as it is. And then also, I create a map, so I need help for Ward 3, which Ward 3 should create a new line. So for Miguel Martinez, if you want to stay here after me, I could talk to you one-on-one. I don't know where you live, but I cannot tell you during public comments, so probably you can. So, everybody, everybody in the door who live in Ward 3, please reach out to City of Reno or me about the redistricting drawing, and we could maybe the Ward 3 span from Northeast Reno to West Avenue, from Nearwood to Don Spring area. So I think that the Ward 3 could require 4 meetings to make a redistricting plan as it is. So hopefully the neighborhood could keep together and not to be chaired manually. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to give public comment today? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom who would like to give public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We have no virtual public comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's move. Do we have a motion to approve today's agenda?
There is one change to the agenda before we approve it.
Yes, correct.
We're going to reorder the items. We'll be talking about redistricting first, and then we will talk about the Taglia's Paradise Park Master Plan update.
So we're just switching B2 and B1.
Yep, just switching the order.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve revised agenda?
I approve with the changes.
I motion second.
Okay, all in favor, and anyone on Zoom, you can pipe up.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thanks. Revised agenda is approved. And then we do have minutes from the March 7th meeting. I don't think that they're attached to our agenda here. So do I have a motion to approve minutes from last meeting?
For
This
the
is
record-
Jennifer Simeo. For the record, I'll make a motion to approve the
minutes from the last meeting.
For the record, Marie Rodriguez, a second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Now, council member, you have a report for us.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you all who are here in person and those that are joining us through Zoom and participating in the Neighborhood Advisory Board today. I am glad that there was discussion about the redistricting process. There looks like we're going to have a presentation and discussion as the board has approved. So hopefully we can get more information. And Pablo, if you want to include that, there's definitely ways to do so. And hopefully in this presentation, I'm sure Callie will cover those ways and how to get involved and then provide that feedback. So we're happy to have that input. Outside of that, I'm just looking forward to speaking about these agenda items. And I do know that there is somebody here who has applied to be on the Neighborhood Advisory Board. So I will also make that plug. If there are any other members that are here watching or in person and would like to be involved as a member on the NAB, feel free to reach out and we can have that conversation. We're looking to fill some of the vacancies that we currently have. So that's all I have. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. Any report from staff?
I do have a few reports for you all. Tyler Shaw, Community Liaison for the record. To start, there will be no Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting for Ward 3 in July. So keep an eye out for the next Ward 3 NAB meeting, which will be in August. And I also wanted to give a special shout out to member Simeo. This is her last Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting for this term cycle. So we just wanted to thank her for all of her hard work on the Neighborhood Advisory Board. And we look forward to seeing her in the future. And one last update, we are working on there is a survey for Barbara Bennett Park. If you're interested, I will be sending that materials to the NAB members and they will be included in the meeting packet after today's meeting. So if you're interested, take a look at the survey and fill it out and tell the city what you think. And that is the end of my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just Ilya Arberman, for the record, a survey on Barbara Bennett Park. Just can you just elaborate a little bit on what's in the survey?
Sure. So Barbara Bennett Park, they are looking at revitalizing the park and making some changes. And we are actually having one of our audience members is helping coordinate some of that. But when I send out the information on the survey, it'll include a little bit more detail on exactly what's going on.
Okay,
Thank you.
cool. Okay, so let's move on to business items. And yeah, I think everyone's anxious to hear the redistricting presentation. So we'll start with that. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Good afternoon.
Tyler, do I have control over it?
Clicker's not working. So just let me know and I'll change the slide.
Okay, you got it. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Callie Wilsey. For the record, I'm the Director of Policy and Strategy for the City of Reno, and I'm here to talk about the 2023 redistricting process. We are just kicking this off and encouraging everyone to get involved. So here's what you can expect tonight from this presentation. We're going to talk about an overview of this process and why we're redistricting this year. We're going to talk about the rules for drawing of the maps to make sure that they are in legal compliance. We're going to talk about an understanding of the timeline, the various ways that everybody can provide input. We're going to end with a discussion. Would love to hear from you tonight about your communities of interest and the neighborhoods in Ward 3. Let's go to the next slide. So this month, we are kicking off the redistricting process with our community. And this is a process to redraw our ward boundaries. The city charter, which is essentially the city's constitution, it's our governing document that says we are a city, we exist, and here are the authorities that we have, requires that we transition from 5 to 6 wards in 2024. That's taking the existing city limits and breaking it into 6 wards rather than 5. And this process is important as it determines which neighborhoods and communities are grouped together for the purposes of electing a council member. So this is about how our residents, how all of you are represented at this local level on the city council. Next slide. So why now? Why are we doing this? You probably think, didn't we do this after the 2020 census? Yes, we did it after the 2020 census. We do that every 10 years to make sure that each of the wards are in population balance. We have a unique situation right now for the city of Reno. Back in 2016, our citizen charter committee reviewed the charter and made a recommendation to change from 5 to 6 wards. The reasoning for that is to reduce the number of people that each council member represents, with the goal of being more responsive to our residents. This was supported by the legislator in 2017 with the passage of Assembly Bill 36, which is all of the tiny print that you see over there on the screen. And that bill stated that we would make this change and transition in 2024. So that's why we're here, is to figure out how and where the 6th ward is going to go. Next slide. So in addition to changing from 5 to 6 wards, this changes the city council composition. So right now, your city council is made up of 7 members. There's a mayor and an at-large council member. Both of those individuals must live in Reno, and they're elected by the registered voters of the entire city, regardless of where they live, as long as they're in the city. And there's 5 ward council members. Those council members must live in the ward they represent and are elected by only the registered voters of that ward. When this change occurs, the composition will look slightly different. There will still be 7 members of council, but there'll be a mayor who similarly will stay the same, live in Reno, elected by everybody in the city, but there will be 6 ward council members who live in their ward and are represented by the voters of that ward. Next slide. So this transition will take a little bit of time for it to completely be done. So we are here today kicking off the process with you, but we have to get the maps, these new ward boundaries, to the registrar of voters by September 1st. So we have a few months to complete this process with the community. And this deadline is necessary to prepare for the general election that's coming up in 2024. For all purposes necessary to carry out the election, these maps need to be in place to carry out the election, such as making sure that candidates know what ward they live in if they want to file for office, where will they campaign, also to make sure voters know what ward they live in and where they'll be voting. But the transition will fully be complete in November of 2024 when voters vote in the Ward 6 council member. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what this process looks like. Our commitment as a city is to have a transparent, community-informed, and data-driven process. It's really driven by these 3 fundamental principles that you see on the slide. It's driven by our redistricting principles. We're going to use data and analysis to support the decision-making, and it's going to be informed by you, our community, through a comprehensive outreach and engagement process. As with the ward redistricting process that we did in 2021, we partnered with an independent analytics firm to help draft the maps. They're experts in this field, and this is what they do regularly. And so all the feedback that we'll be getting goes to them, and they help us create these maps, and we'll talk a little bit more about that process. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about the work that Flow Analytics, our consultant, does. So this process really starts with data collection, and that is the input that we're asking from our community members. It's also supported by the 2020 census data and the most recent American Community Survey data for demographics. Next, they develop and evaluate scenarios with the community input. Then we ensure that there's space for community input to review the maps, and we revise those before they go in front of council for a final decision in August. Now, we recognize that the final plan is likely not going to be perfect or loved by everyone, but we need to ensure that it's a transparent process so individuals understand the pros and cons of each of the different decisions. Next slide. Redistricting is really governed by a set of laws at the federal, state, and local level. And our city council has adopted a set of our own redistricting principles that really align with that to kind of help guide this process. So what you're going to see in here is we must be in compliance with all local, state, and federal laws, including the Voting Rights Act. Our maps must be nearly equal in population. It's going to be virtually impossible to be exactly equal, but we are going to try to get as close as we can, and we'll talk a little bit about the rules around that. Wards must be geographically contiguous. So we shouldn't be kind of pulling a portion from South Reno and North Valleys and saying that those are the same ward. We must retain current council members with existing terms that extend beyond the 2024 general election. We must solicit input from the community, and the 2020 census must be our data source. There's also a set of shoulds, and we should be preserving neighborhood integrity as much as we can. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that. We should also preserve the use of existing natural boundaries, and we should be as compact as possible. Now I will talk a little bit about more of those, but you can see that there's quite a few principles, and one of the things to note is it's important that we're going to be balancing all of these going forward. Redistricting does involve compromise, but they're guided by these core requirements and best practices. Next slide, please. When we talk about analysis, one of the primary principles is equal population. So ward populations must be as balanced as possible. So when we talk about Ward 6, so right now the city has about 264,000 people in our population. When we talk about an ideal or target population for our wards, it's about 44,000 people. It won't be perfect. We get a 5% deviation from that. Right now, when we talk about 5 wards, that target population is 53,800. So to make this generally pencil in a general way, we're talking about each ward will have to get smaller by about 9,800 people to create that 6th ward. Next slide. As we dive a little bit more into that population, the chief criteria around equal population is about total population. So it's not about registered voters of citizen age. It's all total population of the city. And the measure of equal population is called the overall range or maximum deviation. So our city charter says we get about a 5% deviation, knowing that the ward populations cannot be perfectly equal. And we get about 5%. According to our constituents our consultants across the country, it's generally more around the 10% target range. So we have a pretty strict target here in Reno to be able to make our wards as equal as possible. Next slide. There's also geographic criteria. So our wards must be geographically contiguous, as we talked about. And the city has some unique geography kind of in the Ward 4, and there's still some county islands out there. And there's unique situations how we handle them. But again, that kind of scenario of kind of piecemealing is not how redistricting works. And wards should be compact. You can kind of see on your screen how the one under compactness says no, that would not be the ideal shape, for lack of a better term, and yes would be more compact. And there are ways to measure compactness from a scientific and data perspective, and our consultants look at that. But at the end of the day, it really is a visual test that we look at. And lastly, existing political or natural boundaries such as major roads, rivers, natural drainage ways, etc., are some of the ways in which we'll determine where boundaries go. Next slide. There are a couple of legal requirements of note when we talk about voting rights and demographics. So the 14th Amendment of our Constitution prohibits the use of race ethnicity data to draw ward boundaries. But the Voting Rights Act requires consideration of race and ethnicity data to avoid vote dilution. So our consultants take a serious look at this when we start the redistricting process, and they look at the total population and they look at our demographics. And they do an analysis to see if we can have a minority majority district based on where our minority populations are living within the city of Reno. So they do that as a part of our analysis. Next slide. The next piece really fits into community input. Communities of interest is a really key component, and this is related to neighborhood integrity. So a community of interest is a population that you can define on a map that shares common social and economic interests. We look at these the idea is to try to preserve them in a single ward for the purposes of representation. These might be special districts, defined neighborhoods, HOAs. It could be, all of, a elementary school district where everybody goes to the same school. There's a lot of different ways to look at this, and it's really defined by the individuals who are participating in the process. There's no legal definition. It's really about how the community defines ourselves. Next slide. So let's talk about what this input process looks like. So a big overview. We are in phase 1. And what we are focusing on with the community is to gather input about communities of interest. This is a really key component that will drive the creation of the first round of draft maps. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to give it, but I wanted for you to be able to see the overview. So phase 1, we're going to talk about communities of interest. Phase 2, which will kick off later this June, is we're going to actually have draft maps for everybody to look at. And then we're going to revise those maps based on feedback. And then in July, we'll release those maps before they go to council. Next slide. So how can you give your input? There are a couple ways to do this. There are multiple ways you can provide input. There's several online tools. There's several online tools. We're going to dive into those a little bit more. You can attend any of our redistricting meetings. You're at one right now. So thanks for being here. We also have several community meetings. You can also send general comments to redistricting@reno.gov. We are keeping track of every comment, question that comes in, and we're creating a public input log that will be a part of the official record when the maps go to council in August. Next slide. So like I mentioned, the first phase is really dialing in communities of interest. That's COI. So the first way you can provide input is we have a very simple online survey on our website right now. The survey walks you through step by step what a community of interest is, why it's important, and helps you identify your community of interest or interests in a step-by-step fashion. There's questions in there for you to describe it, why it's important to you, as well as a very simple tool for you to actually outline it on a map. Next slide. We've also heard that folks really wanted the ability to dive in a little bit deeper. And so this round, we have partnered with a platform called Districtor that actually allows you to draw the maps and submit your input that way. It's more free form than the survey that we just talked about, and there's no questions to answer. But it's really simple to use. And the other really neat thing about it is you can see on this screen, you can kind of see some of those maps. Those are maps that some of our community has already submitted for this process to look at. So anytime anyone submits a map, the whole public gets to see it. It's a part of our public record and individuals get to take a look at that. Next slide. This is diving a little bit deeper into Districtor, but I just kind of wanted to show how simple it was. So for example, I mocked this up just a few hours ago. So where you see the blue, I essentially kind of outlined 3 wards. They're not indicating anything. I just picked colors and drew them on the map. So, but you can see the blue, I just picked an area. And then on the right of that slide, you can see it says 46,200. So it's actually, as you're drawing in different sections of the map, it's showing you what the population of that area is. So you can hit that target of 44,000 as close as you can and see the difference of different population areas of the city. So again, the yellow area has 32,000, the pink area at the bottom, 33,000. Before you start to draw, we do recommend that you go to reno.gov/redistricting. There's a how-to guide for how to use the platform, as well as just understanding a little bit more of those redistricting requirements. It'll help you draw those maps a little bit more. Next slide. Like I mentioned, meetings, there's a series of meetings to start talking about this process. We're visiting each of the neighborhood advisory boards in June. We kicked off with a community meeting last week. You're our first NAB. We were also holding a meeting in Spanish next week on June 14th. Our next community meeting is June 27th. That's when we'll release our first draft maps. All the details of those are on reno.gov/redistricting, and I'll put in a little plug that when you're there to sign up for our newsletter, because we send out reminders about meetings and how you can sign up for Zoom and all of the things. So I'll plug that. And last slide for the night. So I know that was a lot of information. We covered a lot, but I hope it explains more about what is required and why we're here and how you can get involved in the value. Reminder that information is available on our website at reno.gov/redistricting. And I want to make sure that we allow for questions or comments tonight. Any feedback about what are the neighborhoods, communities of interest in your ward? I've got my colleagues over here and we're typing down any comments that we hear. And we're also happy to answer any specific questions you may have. With that, I'll turn it back to the board.
Yes, thank you very much. And just a quick question for Tyler. As far as the discussion element, is that open to people here as well?
You're welcome to take public comments. If you want to take comments from the board first and then the public, it's your discretion.
Sounds good. Yeah, we can start with the board. Any comments or questions, guys?
For the record, Marie Rodriguez. When talking about the voter dilution that's affected with the minority groups, is that just minority by race, or is it like elderly and other or disabled and other minority groups other than race when they do that?
Thank you for the question. Callie Wilsey for the record, Director of Policy and Strategy. So I believe under the Voting Rights Act, it's particularly defined as race ethnicity groups. But I will confirm with our consultants.
Get reminded for the record. Actually, I was messing around with the maps earlier today. It's pretty cool. I think it's a very unique, we're in a very unique situation where we have the ability to put our input as a community, as opposed to just like, oh, this is the new boundaries and this is what you get. Like we actually have the opportunity to put our input and mess around with this maps, which is pretty exciting stuff. And I just wanted to share that I think it's really important that we all get involved as much as possible, because after all, it's going to be either our areas can get a little smaller or they can grow a little bit bigger. So we need to, just be as active as possible with this redistricting, whatever. Thank you.
Yeah, and Ilya Arberman, for the record, along those lines, I guess the question I have, just sort of process transparency wise, is can you describe the process, like say there's like 1,000 maps that people draw. What's going to be the process of things moving from sort of the brainstorming phase to how, I mean, ultimately it's going to be the council, correct, that will sort of be voting. What's that going to look like on their end?
Absolutely. No, thank you for the question. Can you go back a few slides for me, Tyler? Thank you so much. To keep going. That one, one more. Yes, please. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the process piece and how we kind of develop the map. So first phase, community of interest. I want to know as much as I can about your neighborhoods and how you define them and where they are on boundaries. So we talked about the multiple ways to do that. To your point, we get 1,000 maps. So our consultants have software platforms that take that data in the back end and help them analyze it. Where do we see consistencies? Where do we see major differences? And then they also look at it from the legal perspective to make sure that we're in alignment with everything. So they have kind of tools that we don't necessarily see how to do that. But we then bring, based upon all of that, and so they take not only the maps, any of the feedback we get at these meetings, the surveys as well. And then we talk with them about where those are on maps and how they relate. And And we come up and we merge all that data and we will come up with 3 to 4-ish maps that we call preliminary maps. And that's what we'll release on June 27th at our community meeting. And then we'll say, okay, community, we have these 4 kind of options. Give us your feedback. Where did we miss the mark? Where did we not miss? What do you like? What do you hate about it? And then we'll take that round of feedback and revise it to create final maps. Those final maps are what will go to council for options and they will decide. The process for council is it's an ordinance. So it does take 2 actions by the council to adopt a new ward map. And that's scheduled for both meetings in August. So that's August 9th and August 23rd. And then it is a supermajority vote. So the maps have to be passed by a vote of 5/7. It's not a simple majority in this instance.
Perfect. Yeah, that's exactly the info I wanted. Do we have any questions online? Any questions from the room?
I believe Pablo came up and had a question. Come on up, Pablo. You'll have 3 minutes, same as last time. And then after that, I'll call you up, Mark. Go ahead, Pablo.
All right. Hello, guys. Again, my name is Paul Navduan. Just created my own map. I have 3 different options. So here, option 1 over here. That's for Ward 3. So for Ward 3 is a greenish map over here. You see over here, the greenish map. So option 1 is to maintain a new words remain as option 3, but moving from Ward 2 to Ward 3, and then from Grove Street from Ward 1 to move to Ward 3. You see like a lakeside and golf course, Huffaker area, and East Huffaker area, and you go out all the way to the South Middle Parkway. That's option 1. And then for option 2, here's the option 2. So for option 2, it's to keep at Don Street instead of moving to Ward 2, keep at Don Street as maintain Ward 3, and then move a newer area to Ward 1, and then maintain all the central Reno, and then move them Gulf Street to Ward 3, from Ward 1 to Ward 3, and that include Robin Hood Park, and then all the way to the, you went to the Virginia Lake area, that could move to Ward 3, and then tear option 3 over here. Option 3 is a similar, maintain downstream, moving nearer to Ward 1, and then we move it to Grove Street to Ward 3, and you see all the maintain instead of divide Virginia Street, we move it, shift it to east to West Avenue as maintain as it is, but feel like this is look like divide on West Avenue. Here the West Avenue, and here the Northeast Reno. Could stand Ward 3, but New 5 as it is reading from Ward 4 to Ward 3, all to Wall Creek area. You know the New Huck High School is. Keep it as it is. And then option 4 is build any create a community entrance on map. So if you want to maintain Ward 3, please let me know. I need to have a question because I live in near Ward area. I live in Ward 3. So if you live in Northeast Reno, West Avenue, and Dawson area, please let me know. So thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. Any other comment from the room? Thanks, Mark. Agreed.
Is
Okay,
there
well,
anyone else in the room who'd like to give public comment? Is there anyone on Zoom? It looks like we do have one person on Zoom, Mr. Chair. Give me 1 second. Val, you should be able to unmute. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record. Can you hear us, Val? We can't hear you, Val, if you're talking. It looks like you're unmuted. But we're not getting any input from your mic. There'll be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting, Val, and we can try again then. Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Yeah, I think it's a lot to think about. So yeah, we appreciate you coming, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it very soon.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to Teglia's.
Good evening, Dan Massey, Recreation Manager for the record. What we have before you is the initial introduction and overview of the Paradise Park Master Plan. Allow me to introduce Barb Sintner. I'm sorry, I got it right that time. She's the project manager and landscape architect for Stantec, which is a company that we hired to do the work. So, Barb.
Thank you. For the record, again, Barb Santner, landscape architect with Stantec Consulting here in Reno. Next. We're very excited to be working on the master plan for Paradise Park. It's a really nice property and very important to the city. Next. We've got a team that is put together to address a number of the aspects of the park. We have Grant Hudson, who's a landscape designer and park master planner, Candace Abrams and Kirby Dubay. They're not here, but they're both civil engineers and they're on board to help address some of the stormwater and drainage issues. Next. Today, we're going to go through some of the project background, some facts about the park, existing facilities, a few suggestions for some new facilities, and then we'd like to hear some of your ideas. We'll touch on the project schedule and a summary of the next steps. Next. So the park is located on Audi Boulevard between El Rancho Drive on the east, Carville Drive on the west, and Elementary Drive on the south. It's on the eastern edge of the city of Reno boundary, and the city of Sparks is directly on the east side at El Rancho. I-80 is about half a mile to the south, and US 395 is about half a mile to the west. In February 2023, the city identified the need to prepare a master plan for the park so they could begin the process of identifying some improvements and funding. That at that time, they decided to work with Stantec, so we got under contract to start working on the project. We're exploring upgrades to existing facilities and also some new amenities. And of course, community input is integral to the process. So we're here today to kind of kick off that process. Next. A little more about the park. It's 38.4 acres. It's classified as a community park. It has an activity center and a pretty large stormwater retention system. Or ditch flows into the park from the northwest corner, and it's the sole freshwater source for the park, the ponds. Endow has in the past stocked the two largest ponds, and the ponds cover just a little less than 10 acres. There are about 7 acres of turf, several medium picnic shelters, the senior activity center, restrooms, 2 playgrounds, fitness stations, and a pathways, a community garden, and a futsal court. Interestingly, the city acquired the property from the Teglia family for $10 in 1964. After the drought of 1988 and 94, the ponds were dry, and the city created a new master plan and renovated the west half of the park and rebuilt the former 10-acre pond into 2 smaller ponds with clay liners. That was completed in 1998. Next. About 10 acres in the south were sold to the school district for the Bernice Matthews Elementary School, and then a soccer field was added to that use agreement in 2010. In 2002, the city made improvements to the activity center, patio, and parking. They also installed a new gazebo and landscaping in the northeast corner. The community garden was built in 2003. In 2004, portions of the playground were replaced. In 2017, multiple sections of the pathway were repaved. Some of the information we've gotten from staff is that there is a fairly high maintenance impact on this park. A lot of it has to do with trash pickup and weed control. The east ponds overflow during the winter storms and heavy summer rains requiring cleanup. And just clearing out the willows and weeds around the pond edges has to be done throughout the year. Next. The RTC Audie Wells roadway project is occurring right on the north boundary and will include the installation of a new decorative steel fence, a gate into the park, and some landscaping along the north side of the park. 2 security gates were installed in 2023. One's at the very south end and one is on the northwest side to provide a little more control for overnight visiting and that sort of thing. And then last year, the city obtained some funding to replace the oldest portion of the playground. The new playground will have structures for small and large children, an inclusive merry-go-round, zip lines, and a fitness course. It will also have benches, shaded benches, picnic tables, and new sidewalks, along with a protective fence. There will be a new prefab restroom installed also near the parking lot entrance on the northwest side, and the existing restroom will be converted to storage. That construction is now underway and is expected to be completed by late summer. Next. And again, community input is important. We'll be seeking community input throughout our design process. We don't have the survey live yet, but we will be developing a survey that will be on the City of Reno's website, and that will be made available to you. And we really invite you, your family, friends, and colleagues to take the survey. We will be asking questions about what you think about the existing facilities, thoughts on new amenities and facilities. What do you think the priorities and preferences should be? Design and theme, safety and beautification. And, this is really important for us because we really use this information to develop our concept alternatives. It's really based on input from you. And sometimes you might have an example of a park you've seen somewhere in your travels, and that is also very welcome. We would love to hear some of those ideas if you have a thought on that along those lines. Next. This map has a lot of small print, and I'll just kind of show you what we're doing here. So this map is what we call our site analysis map. And this was developed after walking the whole park with some City of Reno Parks facilities, including Dan and other folks. And then what we do is called an opportunities and constraints map, where we listen to some of the maintenance challenges, look for some of the features that might be kind of more deteriorated and need replacement, and also look for some opportunities for new facilities. So the items in red are right now kind of considered constraints, and we've really labeled the ponds right now in that category just because of the maintenance issues. You can see some of those arrows, the blue arrows kind of to the top and to the east represent some stormwater that is overflowing on the east side onto the pathway and the parking between those two ponds, as was just pointed out, and then actually from Audie Boulevard down into that northerly pond, there's also some overflow. And I believe that should be corrected with the Audie Boulevard improvements, because there's going to be brand new curb and gutter, and drainage should be much improved there. The pink areas are turf areas, and there is a lot of really good turf that seems to be very popular and well used. On the far left side, there's a city-owned strip of land. There was some discussion about possibly making that into a dog park. That might have a good option.
The green down at the bottom, the green kind of rectangle is the community center. And also right next to it, there's a plaza with some seating and tables. It's a bit deteriorated and possibly needs to be replaced and upgraded. The parking lots for the community center in red down towards the bottom look like they need to have maybe some resurfacing. They've gotten kind of rough. And then that green object north of the community center is a group picnic shelter. It's in pretty good shape. It does tend to get some use that's maybe inappropriate, however. The community garden is over on the right side, that other green area, and that is a popular facility as well. Next. So on the southern part of the park is also the really large pond. The pink pathway goes around the pond, and pathway seems extremely popular for folks that want to go for a nice walk. The red areas on the edge of the pond just represent sort of thick vegetation that is kind of a ongoing maintenance challenge, you know, that has to be cut back, willows and some other trees that are just sort of difficult to maintain. And then the red square on the right is the new court that is in the parking lot, which seems to be popular, but again, sometimes maybe some inappropriate uses happen there. So anyway, this is one of the basis for our design as we start analyzing the park, looking for things that are pluses and minuses, and just start brainstorming ideas of what could happen at the park. Next. Here are some photographs of some of the existing facilities, the community center upper left, the picnic shelter near the community center is on the right. The patio at the community center I was referring to lower left, and then of course the ponds themselves. Next. There are, of course, a lot of pathways, upper left, benches and furnishings are on the upper right and lower left. And then lighting is on the right side. And lighting was kind of a big thing mentioned on our site walk that could be improved and just really kind of help have a more perception of safety in the park throughout. Next. Additional facilities, the futsal court in the asphalt parking lot is on the upper left. The exercise stations on the right are maybe not really well used, not sure there's something that really needs to stay there. Maybe they go away and become something different. And then the community garden on the lower left. Next. So again, we are going to look at some new amenities that we think could be candidates for the park, but again, we want to hear your ideas as well, and you can share those with us today and also complete the survey. Next. Here's some just initial thoughts about some of the new facilities that might be considered. One was disc golf, because there is a lot of turf, so that's kind of conducive to that sort of activity. Some new benches that might have shade elements to them. Lighting, again, mentioned heavily just to improve the sense of safety. And, you know, those can be done in a way that are casting down so they don't have spillover light around on the surrounding neighborhood. Interpretive signage about the ponds and wildlife. Some more updated furnishings like picnic tables that are very sturdy. Some of the pond improvements that could occur that would really help the maintenance would be kind of what's showing on that second to the left slide on the bottom, which would be maybe to do a little more rock on the edges of the ponds, and that might preclude some of the heavy vegetation from growing on those edges. We might consider some additional landscaping, and then, as mentioned earlier, possibly a dog park. Next. So again, today we're looking to get some ideas from you, and we'd love to hear what you think today. If you have any design ideas right off the bat, and then I will also then later go over the schedule. So if you want to take a break now, if the board has any thoughts you want to share, that would be great.
last month, there was an elementary school here during the city council meeting where the students took a few minutes to give public discourse to the city council about what they would like to see for the city. And I remember a number of the students mentioning they would like water parks, some kind of water activity for the kids, especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
I can understand why they would want that, something like that. A safe place to ride their bikes. I know we have a walking path in this park, but I think the kids might like a safe place to ride their bikes, especially if they live on a kind of street where they can't safely ride their bikes. They maybe have an area where they can go, maybe a walking path, bike path as well. And the interesting thing, you mentioned that there's a lot of green in the area. And I remember one particular boy said that he would like some soccer nets in the park so that they can play soccer and have a place, to do their goals. So this isn't necessarily mine, but it's what our children in our community were asking for. I do know we've had a number of seniors come to city council meetings asking about this park and what they would like to see. So as we're adding benches along the walking path, I think we need to keep our seniors in mind to make sure that they're not too far apart in case they need to stop and take a break. And I'm glad that you are including shaded benches. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Get reminded for the record. I do like the idea for the disc golf. I think I tried it a couple of times. It's pretty fun. I think it'll be a cool activity to have out there. And I do want to reiterate on the water park aspect of it, especially around that community right there. That would be something really perfect. I think that a lot of the kids will enjoy. I visited a couple times in the summer during over here by what's it called, Legends, and they have like the little shooting water things, and all the kids are having fun there and stuff like that. So we could add something to that similarly over here in the park would be pretty cool. Get more people more engaged in the park, and so we can see better engagement of it. And I do think a lot of more lighting has to be done around the park as well. Like you said, there's ways where we can mitigate the light so it doesn't hit the communities around and stuff like that, so we don't get those complaints. Even with the benches, with the shade, even just an area that has no bench but just the shade, for the elderly people that do have are on their wheelchairs and stuff like that, so they can still have somewhere that they can park and have the shade over them and stuff like that would be pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good things going on, a lot of good thoughts, and I think we just have to keep putting our input so we can see those come to realization. Thank you.
And Ilya Arberman, for the record, yeah, I'll second the disc golf idea. I think having any activities that people would go there to do, just I think increasing the number of people at the park always makes parks feel a little more inviting and safe. Yeah, and as far as the ponds, I think they're a nice feature in theory, but yeah, over the years, I've definitely been there when they haven't looked so hot. So I'd say probably the community would be okay with more trees and less water potentially, because I don't think the ponds are kind of nice to look at, but they're not really activity wise, especially if they're not in great shape. I think they kind of detract a little bit without obviously, displacing the geese or anything like that. But more trees and shade to me seems like a pretty important thing, because that part of Reno definitely feels hotter and less sort of shaded than a lot of other parts. So I think that people would appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Another quick comment. Going back to what he said, I think that's really important. I just Mara Loma just came to mind. Mara Loma has a bunch of trees all over the park, especially along the walkways and the pathways. So there's, it's really enjoyable to go out, even during the summer when it's kind of hot. You still have a lot of shade coming through. But thinking about this park specifically, there isn't a lot of trees. So there's a lot of, just, open, and the sun is, it's pretty hard around there. And I think if we were to focus more on the trees and make it more green, I think that'll be pretty nice as well. We'll give it a different aspect. And also going back on the soccer stuff, that'd be a pretty good idea as well. Maybe use the bigger portion of the green space for the disc golf and have the other smaller one for the soccer, maybe, or something like that. Because there is the futsal on the other side, but that's more, there's different types of soccer. That's a futsal, and there's natural grass soccer that the kids like to play in as well. So maybe that could be taken into consideration as well.
Any input from the room or from Zoom?
This is Jennifer Simeo for the record. One thing that I always enjoy with like ponds is water fountains in the ponds. It kind of creates a nice noise, relaxing noise, and it also helps kind of move around the water and keep the water quality a little bit better. Thank you.
Just to kind of piggyback off of some of the things they were saying, I do like the idea of including these different activities because to bring it together, to make it a family park where it's a place where kids want to go, where seniors want to go, where families want to go. And so I do also like the idea of the addition of the dog park. I don't really feel like in that area that there are a lot of options for that. I know other parts of the city have the big, wonderful dog parks. I know a lot of people go up to Rancho San Rafael. There's one over by the university. But that would be an opportunity, like seniors to bring their little dogs, families to bring their dogs, and bring the community together. So I like that idea.
Another quick comment on the new playground that's being built.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if there's been any talks about the same thing about trees around the area. I used to go when I was younger. I haven't been there in a while, but I do remember always the equipment was always really hot. So I think if they're already investing in building a new playground for the kids to use, make it a little bit more enjoyable, add a little bit more of a trees and shade so it could be a little bit less hot around there as well. I'm not sure if that was brought up or not, but if it isn't, then there we go. Thank you.
Well, again, Barb Santner for the record. The new playground does have some shade components over the equipment. So that'll be great. And then some of the benches also have shade structures over them. And then also there's going to be some shade trees as well. So we will have, that'll be incorporated in some of that new stuff that's under construction right now. Anyone else?
Did you want to take public comment, Mr. Chair?
Any public comment from the room or from Zoom?
Looks like we do have one public commenter. Yeah. Just come up to the front. That way we can hear you in the mic. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Shonda Golden. I'm the owner of Bizarre Guitar. We are right behind the park. I'm very invested in the park. I've had the pleasure of walking the park with Councilman Martinez and the former Councilman Oscar Delgado. Here are a few of my ideas as someone who lives in that area and goes into the park, only to show the council people how dangerous the park really is. So these are some of the ideas that I have to bring people back into the park so that they can be the ones that actually protect the park from the homeless and the violence that is in the parks. You need money to do these things, right? So I don't think a dog park is something that we should be spending money on right now. Shade sales for the whole new playground. The community garden, Councilman Martinez and I both walk that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to the community garden. There's a squirrel problem there. Again, money. A water feature would be better spent than a disc golf. I think that you would see more community involvement, especially with the children there. There's a lot of kids there and they're not in the park. Park's too dangerous. There is that football. I understand that the sport is different on grass as it is on concrete. But again, right now, money should be spent on things that bring the people into the park. One of the most important thing would be the pond itself. If you look at Idlewild Park, everybody's at Idlewild Park, but nobody's walking their dogs or riding bikes at the Teglia Park because it's too dangerous. So these are my ideas. I'm happy to meet with Mr. Massey and walk the park again with Barb so that we can see and walk the park. I invite you to walk the park with me also, so that you can see where my ideas are coming from as someone who's actually living in that area. The park used to have a lot of children in it. It does not anymore. That park belongs to the citizens. So we should really be thinking about their needs first. I think this disc golf thing, that might be a fun thing, but a water feature is much better. You'll get the parents out there with the kids. And again, if I could just say, no dog park. There's enough paths there. They can walk their dogs there. I don't see people walking dogs. I see a lot of Rottweilers out in the area because it's a tough neighborhood and it doesn't have to be that way anymore. It can go back to the citizens. It's their taxpayer money. It should go to the children and into the families. Thank you.
Thank you, Shonda. Any other comment?
Is there anyone else in the room or on Zoom who'd like to give comment on this
We have a
item?
comment over here.
Please state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Daphne Adiola. I have a lot of nostalgia when it comes to the park because I also grew up in the area. I think these are all good ideas, and I just think we should emphasize the restrooms as well, just making them inaccessible areas. Just because I remember going and not being able to go to the bathroom. But yeah, I think we should consider just having bathrooms stationed in different areas that are accessible to the public. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. There's no further public comment, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Barbara, if you want to finish, and yeah, I'll just second it. Is a big park, so bathrooms and accessible places make sense, because if it's all the way on the other side of the park, you might not want to head over there, but go ahead and finish. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Yeah, next slide, please. Again, Barb Santner for the record, Stantec Consulting. So our schedule, here we are, June 2023. Next.
Do you think you could get a little closer to the mic so we can hear you? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah. This is our first public outreach today with Ward 3 NAB. Next, we'll be putting together the public survey that will be online, and then that will be posted for several weeks. We will get the results of that and then work on several conceptual master plan alternatives. We would anticipate having those available in June or July. And then we'll host a public workshop in August or September to have you review those alternatives. Based on your input there, we would have a preliminary master plan developed. It would be one plan, you know, after looking at the alternatives. We'll have another public workshop later this fall. It'll then go to the Parks Commission for input. We'll take that input and develop the final master plan, and then go back to the Parks Commission and City Council by early next year. Next. So that's where we are. Look for the public survey coming out soon. And again, we really need your input. That's what we use to develop those concept plans. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions if you have any.
For the record, Gabriel Maya, I do have a quick question. This whole master plan is great. You know, it's very important that we get the opinions of everybody involved in this. Is there anything specific that we could be doing to reach out to that specific community? I feel that given that they are it's a challenge community. Maybe they don't have the resources or the knowledge that we have to know about all of this stuff going around. Is there anything specific that we can we do, like to reach out to the
Well, one of the things we could do would be on our workshops. I mean, we're going to have two different workshops, one for the conceptual master plan alternatives and one for the the preliminary. And we can do those, like do one in person or both in person instead of virtual. So that way, if people are not inclined to be logging onto a computer for a virtual meeting, some people are more inclined to go in person, like to an evening meeting. And I think if we split those up, that way we can kind of reach a variety of people a little better. So that it would be one thing to do for sure.
Okay.
Do you have any other thoughts yourself on in how the community could be reached?
More specifically, I think has there any thought been, is there any thought into doing one of these meetings in Spanish? I think if this is how I see it, this is how I put it in my mind. If we could have some sort of meeting at the community center in the park, that would be giving information in Spanish, because it is a little bit an area with higher Hispanic population, to my knowledge. I don't know if that's completely true or not, but I do know a lot of people that live around that area. And I think that, again, if we make it more accessible, and especially giving something in there in Spanish, will be a lot easier for them to understand and to put their input to into this project.
As I mentioned early on, my ideas actually came from these students who came before state council and gave their ideas. I think we need to listen to the people who are going to be using this park. And I know the seniors have voiced their opinions quite a few times here, but I don't think when we talk about these meetings and ideas, that something like this, we need to include the children. It looks like we're going to be doing some of this in August and September. So maybe giving some of these surveys out at the schools in the area and hearing what the kids want. The kids want water parks. And we probably should put several water parks, for different age groups, one for the smaller kids, one for the bigger kids, maybe. The kids want a place to safely ride their bikes. The kids want to play soccer in the parks. So we need to, I think, make sure that we're including everybody who's going to be using the parks, not just the adults, but the kids as well.
Great, thank you.
And Ilya Arberman, for the record, I'll just second that. Yeah, I feel like in-person meetings in particular, maybe ones that aren't here, it's probably a good way to engage some of the users. I think coming here is an obstacle definitely for some people.
Or the community center might be an ideal place to
Yeah.
have one of the meetings for sure. And maybe the first one so that we get more folks at the beginning stage.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, again, look for those online surveys and we will keep you apprised of our next steps. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barb.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll move to next business item on the code, Title 18 revisions.
Good evening. My name is Grace McAdin. I am a senior management analyst for the Development Services Department. And I'm going to briefly discuss our efforts for 2022 or 2023, excuse me, to kind of clean up this zoning code that we adopted in 2021. All right, so as I said, in 2021, we adopted a new zoning code. And this was for many different reasons, but our code prior to this was very outdated. And so part of this process, it was a comprehensive update. It took about 3 years. We had a consultant kind of help us through this process. We consulted with a technical advisory committee, and part of this was to make sure that we were implementing our master plan, which was a very robust neighborhood outreach process, in our actual zoning code. And just to back up a little bit, just to kind of give you guys a high level look, our zoning code is a document that tells you what you can build and where you can build it. And so part of this zoning code update, it was always anticipated that we would come back, take a look at what's working, what's not working, and then clean up as necessary. So it's very rare that you adopt a document that's this robust and have no issues whatsoever. And so part of this Title 18 zoning code update, just from a high level, we streamlined and simplified a lot of our processes. We reorganized and updated some of our development standards. We added some figures to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And then we also revised some of our development review processes and procedures to make it a little bit easier for people to understand, as well as for staff to administer. And so through this process, I want to keep reminding people there's kind of two buckets of cleanup or update items. So we have our zoning code cleanup, and this mostly kind of consists of about 400 plus items that staff has identified that just aren't working. So things that are either, and we'll go into more detail on this later, but that's mostly what it consists of. And then we have a second bucket, which is city council's priorities. And so city council kind of came to staff and said, here's things we want to focus on that we want you to either add to code or change to code so that we can make sure that these priorities get taken care of. And so the cleanup items, from a high level consist of grammatical errors, going through reading the zoning code, and staff finds, embarrassing errors that we've adopted in this code. And so we've made notes of those so that we can just make sure to clean that up. Inconsistencies, so where it says your setbacks for this area are X, and then somewhere else in the zoning code, it says actually it's something else. And so just making sure we clean that up. So if you're trying to build a shed or a garage, you just go to one space in that zoning code and you can do it. Unintended changes. So with this big comprehensive update, we found things, where really we didn't intend for this to happen, but unfortunately that was the result of this big update. One of those things, just off the top of my head, we've already fixed this, but it's things like this, where the adult ordinance or adult businesses were allowed in places they shouldn't be. So we said, oops, we made sure to fix that quicker than some of these other items, but things like that where we definitely don't want those in the zoning code. And then there's bigger items, and I'll go into that. Some of these bigger items, and some of these we classified them as hidden Easter eggs, so it's really fun for us to find. And one of those, I'll give a couple examples. One of those were, so in all districts except the Parks, Greenways, and Open Space districts, which we classify as PGOS, they have certain standards for these districts. Lighting shall be shielded from adjacent residencies. Courts and parking areas shall be screened from adjacent residentially zoned properties. All makes sense. But then we have a third standard that any lighting that's greater than 3 feet in height shall be subject to a site plan review. I've never been to a sports court or a parking lot where that lighting is 3 feet in height. If we need to subject those to site plan reviews, so be it, but we need to write that in a little bit different of a way. We didn't know that they had to go into site plan reviews until we really dug into this code. So it's just hidden in there. We need to say it in a different way or get rid of it. Another example is standards for multifamily districts. This is just worded a little funky. So reduce setback requirements with a conditional use permit. And so how it reads in code is any project requiring a conditional use permit in a multifamily district shall have a minimum 20-foot setback from any property abutting a single family district. So what about the projects that don't have a conditional use permit, obviously? So that's something that we're working on. Should all multifamily projects have that big of a setback? Should they not? How do we want to go about that? Some additional zoning code cleanup items are residential compatibility. So we have some conflicting regulations specifically for residential compatibility. We have some verbiage in there related to setbacks and step backs, very similar, but very different. And so instead of these very confusing and complex regulations, maybe we create a list of design options. And so that's how you can show your compatibility. So just making it a little bit more straightforward for the average everyday citizen to look at this and say, okay, if I were to build something, this is what I would have to do. Another thing that kind of came from this zoning code update that we've discovered is something we need to work on is standards for industrial development. And so through COVID, industrial development boomed. And so we need to make sure that we're protecting those residences of where this industrial is going. So things like hours of operation, dock door locations, lighting, and noise have all been things that come up that have been frustrations for neighbors, and rightfully so. And so how do we make that better? Some other items are lot and building setbacks. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but things like what is 2.5 stories? How do we classify a half story? Can you live in a half story? Can you sleep in a half story? What is that? There's one set of setback standards in one place, but then if you dig a little bit further, there's another set of setback standards a little bit further on. And so really just having one place where you go and you find your standards, and then kind of what is an appropriate setback when you're next to a residence versus an industrial, and making sure that we're consistent there. So previously in this presentation, I talked about those two different buckets. City council priorities is the second bucket. And so there's a number of priorities that they've listed, and we keep count of all of this. 3 items that we're addressing with this code cleanup because they fit into the word cleanup. It's not a comprehensive rewrite. And 3 of those are appeals, signs, and telecommunications. And we have hired a consultant that has a background in both legal and, some of these items, legal and planning, excuse me. And so they will be helping us with this process. So we're just starting this outreach process for the zoning code cleanup. We have nothing in draft form. We don't even have anything we can say, here's what we're proposing. And that's why a lot of the things I've said are, I don't know what the right way, and I don't know what the path forward is. So we wanted to make sure that we started this outreach process kind of with a clean slate, got all of the feedback before we even started these drafts. And so as part of this outreach process, we will be having a technical advisory committee similar to what we did with the zoning code rewrite. And these are people that use our zoning code every single day. So these are people that are very familiar with it, that are technical experts, as we like to call them, who know the code and know what's wrong with it. We also have a separate list for stakeholders, and that's really anybody who is interested and would like to be involved in this process. We will send periodic email updates, and that includes the NAB members. You guys have all been added to this list. And then we recently created a website for people to be able to stay updated on this. There's no documents on here yet because we have nothing in draft form. But this is where you'll go to keep up to date when there's new meetings, and you can submit public comment on this website, and we will upload all of our draft documents to this website. So a general timeline, and I'm hoping we can stick to this, but we're flexible. We don't want to just push something through if it's not right. Summer of 2023, we want to try to get some draft edits, some sections drafted, and then we want to get some stakeholder input of what people are really frustrated with. And it doesn't have to be section 18 whatever. It can just say, I live next to an industrial development and I'm frustrated with the noise. Really just basic high level things. In fall, we would like to kind of start this public review and engagement. And so just kind of continuing that outreach process, but maybe we'll have some more robust drafts available for review as well. And then in winter of 2024, that's when we're hoping to kind of get all of our stuff approved and sent to City Council and Planning Commission and get something adopted winter of 2024. And that's it. That's something different.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna, unfortunately, I have to excuse myself from the meeting for just some personal reasons. And so I'll hand it over. I'm not sure, Tyler, how it works chair-wise.
Gabriel, can you act as our acting chair if you're comfortable?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. Thank
No
you very
problem.
much.
All right, any questions from the NAB members in person or online?
going to say.
Oh, thank you.
All right, there's no questions from the NAB members or in person online, then we thank you for your time. We do, it seems like sometimes with different I believe especially with different phases of different people coming in and approving regulations and zoning codes and stuff like that, sometimes a lot of things go under the bridge and then already get clarified, and then it creates this type of situations, but it's never too late to fix it. And I believe this is the right thing to do. So
Definitely. And our zoning code as it stands today is it's difficult to interpret. And so that's why sometimes you get these different interpretations. So that's really what we're trying to clean up with this, so that anyone can pick it up and have the same interpretation.
yeah, correct. Because there's always, those back and forth. Oh, I read here. Oh no, it says over here, and it's just creates a miss that's not necessary. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, it just kind
No,
of
it's
came
fine.
afterwards. And this probably maybe addressed with noise concerns and hours of operation. But going back to page 8 of the zoning cleanup items, when it comes to industrial, I don't know how much this is taken into account, because I've seen it not taken into account in other cities. I used to be a commercial truck driver. And when you're going into a commercial location, even if the hours of operation, say they start business day at 8 o'clock, you get there because of how you drive across the country. You might get there at 11 o'clock at night, the night before, and you need somewhere to park. And you're not going to go to the truck stop if you can just park there and be there on time for your appointment.
Right.
And so you end up with trucks idling if it's in the winter time or in the summertime, because they need to stay comfortable inside their sleeper cabs. Are those things taken into account when working this? And also the access into the neighborhood? They might be driving their truck through that neighborhood to get to the industrial area, at later hours of the night, and they are noisy.
Definitely. It's a lot of times when we have conditional use permits or site plan reviews that often come before you as a NAB. Truck idling is a condition that is prohibited between certain hours because it is fairly disruptive. And then as far as those truck routes, it's difficult to obviously change what we have now. You can't really change the way the trucks get to the sites, but it's definitely something that we look at now, especially since we've been getting these complaints, is these trucks just constantly. And I think especially with COVID, this industrial development just skyrocketed. And so the amount of trucks going into these developments is more than we anticipated. And so really taking into account what types of traffic as opposed to just traffic, and where will that traffic be coming from? So definitely something we look at. Like I said, it's tough to change what we have now because it exists, but those are things we want to make sure we address with this type of cleanup.
Is it possible to, when these places want to build up these industrial areas, to require that they have a staging area for the trucks that is off the street and maybe further back from, like, I know you're taking into account where the dock doors are located. And sometimes those dock doors, like, for example, they just built a new one on McCarran where all the dock doors are facing McCarran. But maybe if they were to put the dock doors in the back and the staging area in the back, so that the truck drivers don't have, because they need somewhere to go.
Right.
You're driving 11 hours and they get to where they got to go, and then they're told they can't idle. They want to sleep, and it's 20 degrees outside. They're going to freeze if they don't idle their truck. It's 100 degrees outside. They're going to they can't sleep. And legally by DOT law, they have to be rested after they to drive the next day. They need to idle to keep their cab comfortable. So maybe require that they have a staging area for the drivers so that it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're often worried about the neighbors, but don't often think about the people who are idling. So that's a great point.
All right, any more comments from the NAB members or in person online? No? Okay, then. Well, thank you so much for your time. Let's continue on with the
Thank you.
With item B4, and Are we doing just before or before one?
They're the same item. We'll open B41, which is LDC 23-00056 Carville Park Senior Apartments. And I believe we have the developer here to present. Just let me know when you're ready to move on to the next slide.
Will do.
Good afternoon.
Good evening. We'll attempt to make this brief for everybody. We're here to talk about Carville Park Apartments and the pending SPD application that we have out to review planning commission and city council ultimately. At a high level, I think Carville Park in this case, which we'll go through, is a real case study in the preservation of affordable housing, and particularly here, the preservation of low-income senior housing. Next slide. So a bit of context. Carville Park was purpose-built in 1979 by its now owner, which is a nonprofit organization run by the Northern Nevada Building and Construction Trades Council. It was built as 52 4-bedroom units. So if you think of dorm style, and the next slide will be a floor plan to explain it more, but has 208 beds. And each of those bedrooms has its own means of ingress and egress. And it has always served the same population. It was built with a loan program that HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, came up with in the 70s called the 202 loan program. And with that loan program, you got both funds to finance affordable housing, but you also got what's called the Housing Assistance Payment Contract. And so all your units are covered by HUD at a certain level, and that changes each year. The requirement is that you house that specific demographic and that your rents never raise above a certain level. In the case of Carville Park, it was not above 60% of the area median income. It predominantly serves people closer to about 35% AMI today. So it was built like that. It's been operated like such. And as you can see, it's 134 parking spaces, 11 two-story buildings, the resident criteria. And as the nature of most affordable housing or low-income housing, it gets, as time goes on, it gets more and more difficult to pay for deferred maintenance items. And that's the case here with Carville Park. And so for a number of years, its owner has been working to try and figure out a way that they could continue to put more money and do a big overhaul of deferred maintenance, a large renovation, and it coincided with a renewal of the existing HAP contract. So the next slide. So the next slide shows you the existing floor plans. And as you can see in kind of the four corners, those are the units. You also see in the four corners that there's a door that goes into each unit. And then what you'll see kind of in the middle is a kitchen and common living space. So you have four strangers that live in a bedroom, and they share a kitchen through their own door, and they share a common living area. And as you can assume, maybe this worked really well. It tends to work really well in student housing, but with the onset of COVID, the idea of having seniors sharing kitchens, for most humans, but particularly for HUD, was a bit of a red flag. Oh, we should think about this. We should be a little bit more thoughtful. There's got to be other ways that we can do this. And so as the HAP contract came up for renewal, HUD expressed an interest, particularly in this property, in finding a way that maybe the units could be separated into individual studio apartments. And so we went down the path and have worked with city staff who've been fantastic. And what I think is a bit of a unique case. You have 208 leases, you have 208 residents, but technically there's 52 units. So 52 times 4, 208. To shift to 208 studios, which it pretty much has been, requires a modification in the zoning, and there's really nothing in the zone in the code that allows for it, but an SPD. And so we've been as creative and thoughtful as we can, and I think so as staff, in trying to figure out a way to make that happen. And so next slide, you'll see that with the SPD, what happens is you go from 52 units that are all 4 bedrooms to 208 studio apartments. You still have 11 two-story buildings. You still have the same number of parking spaces. The resident criteria stays exactly the same. We continue to serve elderly senior citizens at the same level of income. We maintain the affordability, but you'll have significant upgrades to a building in a community that needs it. So the exteriors cosmetically will look far more appealing than they do just given their age. The unit upgrades will be new kitchens, new flooring, new windows, new HVAC systems, new roofs. There'll be solar panels as well to offset the electricity and utility use for residents. There'll be upgraded landscaping and some of the other features, a new community center and a new leasing office. You do all of that with no direct increase in rent to the residents that are qualified. Next slide. And so this would be the modification of that same box. The building gets no different, no wider. You wouldn't be able to tell from the outside that anything changed, but in the inside, you'll have 4 individual apartments, each with their own kitchen, each with the same ingress and egress that they had before, each with their own bathrooms. And so you cut off some of the operational challenges that come with having 4 strangers share a kitchen, but also a lot of the health concerns that would come over time. HUD will still honor the HAP contract, they'll renew the HAP contract. And in part of the SBD guidebook, we've stated very clearly that affordability will remain here at Carville Park, that's as well as the elderly preference, which is 62. So, and then next slide. I don't think I have another one. That might be it. Yeah, okay. So that's the last slide. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Marie Rodriguez for the record. That area that used to be the common living area, is that going to, it doesn't have a name on the new one. Is that just going to be like a little lobby?
Yeah, it doesn't
entrance sitting area?
exist. That unit 1 is actually just kind of a uniquely larger kind of studio apartment. So it'll be one unit, one individual's unit.
Okay, so that space, it looks like they still come in through that space, but then they go to their own apartment?
Yeah, so where the cursor is, that would be their front door. And then everything to the right would be their unit, that's a closet. They never get into another unit. So it's just a bigger unit of the 4.
Okay, so that belongs to unit 1.
Yep,
They have that
yep.
extra space?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think you did mention it because I noticed in the old photos, it looks like they have little individual window unit type AC. They're going to have central air and heat.
Yeah,
in
it's
the
called a PTAC unit is what's there right now. And you'll have individual controlled HVAC. In addition, and I didn't mention before, as part of the code upgrades to the building, there's not fire suppression or hardwired fire alarms. There will be as part of the renovation, in addition to all the other improvements that'll happen. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Give a reminder for the record. So I'm kind of lost with this with this project. So the whole idea is to change into this new floor plan. Will be what's the plan to are the residents of the specific apartment complex, I mean, are they going to be relocated somewhere else between the whole process of remodeling, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, great question. So the renovation will take place over 20 months. And as is often the case with a lot of HUD regarded properties or properties that receive HUD subsidies, HUD has a standard for temporary relocations and any permanent relocations. And so it's obviously very forbidden to have any permanent relocations. The owner developer has they can't exceed 12 months of having a resident temporarily relocated. Otherwise, they start losing certain subsidies. So the property will be the renovation will take place in 2 phases, and part of the property will be vacated. The landlord is responsible for finding all of the residents a temporary relocation spot that is at the standard of which they were at before, and a kitchen, bathroom, all the things, all of the accommodations for transportation, getting their mail, transferring cable contracts, all of that is the landlord's responsibility. And in addition, what we'll have is we have a national third party that exclusively does the relocation and the resident coordination for properties that are having a renovation using HUD subsidies. So, but yes, that'll take place. There'll be a temporary relocation. It's a safety hazard to have residents in a building during this scope of renovation.
So you mentioned this is in 2 phases. So is it going to be like taking half the residents, relocating them, doing half of it, bringing them back.
Yeah,
and then the
you
other
bring it
half?
back and then you recycle
Okay,
and you go.
It'll
to
be
the
20 months and 20 months?
No,
or 10
20
and
months
10?
total, 20 months total. Yeah, and it's not quite 10 and 10. Presumably, the first few buildings are a little bit slower as you mobilize and the contractors get used to it, and then it's a little faster on the back end. So it's not quite 10 and 10.
Thanks.
I do have a quick question. What about for the senior residents? Then we'll need they're already in need of a wheelchair. Is there any plans to put one of those lifts on those buildings so they can go up the stairs and up the
Yeah.
stairs, or any resident who needs the amenity of the wheelchair ramps and stuff like that, they're gonna be all placed on the bottom floor compared to other residents, or how?
Yeah, so could you go to the second slide? You can see from these slides, you notice at the first floor, there's 2 steps. And as you go around the property on the first floor, there's either 1 step or 2 steps, and it kind of depends on the topography of the site. Per HUD's guidelines, at least 10% of the units at a HUD property have to be fully ADA accessible. To exceed that, we're actually going to go 50% because all of the first 4 units, we're going to change that step so that there's either a ramp there or there's no step. And so every unit on the first floor will be as accessible as possible. In addition to that, there's degrees of accessibility. And so we'll have 50% of the units that'll be able to get access just based on the fact that there's no step or hurdle to get a wheelchair in and out. 20% of the units will have full-on ADA, fully accessible bathrooms. So the turning radiuses, you'll be able to roll underneath sinks. Those would be, in addition, we're doubling the HUD standard. But given what this property has done historically, and this property hasn't seen less than 95% occupancy, it's the right thing to do as we ensure that it's here for a long time to come.
All right, thank you so much for your answer.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All righty. Well, is there any more questions from the NAM members in present or online? All righty, well, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you for the information. All righty. So that would conclude B items. So let's go ahead and let's go to item C. Is there any announcements from the NAM members or Councilman Martinez or staff? Very good. Alrighty, so do we just well, is there any public comment remaining?
Before we move to public comment, item D is future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items that the NAB members would like to discuss in the August meeting? Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, we can now move to public comment. Do you want to give public comment? Okay, just go right out. I've got your name already. You'll have 3 minutes.
I'm gonna be very, very quick. So before you leave, so I wanted to say thank you for the survey time for Ward 3. This is my first time, maybe probably my last time as a member, as a resident of Ward 3. I don't know what happened for 3 districts. I don't know what happened. Miguel Martinez or someone, a council member, move out the ward, not to complete each other. And after 2024, that's going to be real game changer for Ward 3. Anything else? So hopefully, finger crossed. And I like Silvino. I like Silvino, and I like Miguel Martinez. So here we go.
Thank you so much. Hopefully everything works out for for yourself. So we can keep on coming to these NAB meetings and putting your input. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment today, either in the room or virtually? If you'd like to give public comment virtually, please indicate by using the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Mr. Chair, we have no further public comment.
All right, so let's go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Do I get a motion?
For the record, Marie Rodriguez, I motion that we adjourn.
Anybody?
Semio, for the record, I will second that.
Thank you so much. So for the motion to adjourn this meeting has, sorry.
Those in favor?
Those in favor to adjourn this meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This meeting has concluded. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.